Welcome to Voices in Leadership, live streamed worldwide from the Leadership Studio at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. I'm Dean Michelle Williams. The goal of Voices is to highlight the experiences of leaders confronting major public health frontiers and to better understand effective leadership and how it can affect change. I hope you find this program engaging and informative. Thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to those of you here in our audience and to the viewers online around the globe. I'm Eric Anderson, the Director of Voices in Leadership. This series focuses on lessons of effective leadership to create positive change in public health. We're broadcasting from the Leadership Studio, where the programs and related content have received over 7 million engagements to date and counting. We're happy to host today's discussion, which is entitled Strength versus Wisdom, a conversation on the leadership of the future with former Bulgarian President Rosen Plevneliev. President Rosen Plevneliev is the fourth democratically elected president of the Republic of Bulgaria, holding office from January 2012 through January 2017. The Plevneliev presidency was marked by a long-term strategic vision, calling for a truly transformative agenda focused on education, high technology and innovation, and a green and energy-efficient economy that protects the environment. During his time, he represented Bulgaria at the United Nations General Assembly and was a signatory to the historic UN resolution entitled Transforming Our World, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In 2015 and 2016, President Plevneliev successfully led the Bulgarian chairmanship of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. President Plevneliev is a great supporter of the international rule of law, human rights, and freedoms, and has been recognized globally for his many contributions as a leading European and liberal Democrat. Before I turn this discussion over to our moderator, Professor Rifat Atun, please join me as we welcome President Rosen Plevneliev to the Voices in Leadership series at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health. Thank you.
Yes, President Plevneliev, welcome to Harvard. It's an immense privilege to have the opportunity to have this conversation with you. So we live in extraordinary times, and extraordinary times require extraordinary leadership. And you have been an extraordinary leader, introducing major reforms in Bulgaria and managing its full transition to membership of the EU. What kind of leadership qualities were important that helped you to manage this transition?
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited, very honored to be here, the best educational institution in the world, and talking to so many young, bright people here in the studio, but all over the world that are watching us. It's just speaking about wisdom. One of the important wisdom you can learn and transfer to the next generation is share your lessons learned. You were a business leader, political leader. Share what you learned with the next generation. And I'm very grateful to you that you're giving me the opportunity to do that today. That was a very tough time, very tough mandate. I just in 2 years' time, 2013, 2014, I had to face 5 governments, 3 parliaments in my country. There was a record number of crises in the European Union. Yes. I had a very special team tracking all those crises. It was not 1, but 11 dramatic crises that were pushing the European Union, and it was migration, terrorism on the street. It was actually a very difficult relation with Russia. It was the Ukrainian crisis, the Greek crisis, the Brexit, and many others that came. I knew from my background, I am an open-minded to my life, always being proud of when destiny is giving you a hand, you're giving a hand too. You're already changing your life, and that was always for good. So I was a Gastarbeiter in Germany, starting from scratch, having nothing. I was an investor, I was a CEO, I was even a scientist. My diploma work in Bulgaria was artificial intelligence, and I was one of the best computer programmers, but my life changed and switched again totally. And from being a computer programmer, I became a Gastarbeiter in Germany. And yes, I was also a minister, I was a president, I'm a very passionate Democrat, devoted father. And I know that when it's tough, when it's difficult, it's important. If it's easy in your life, on your company, on your society, it's not important. You go easy through the time, but if it's difficult, and I had to face a lot of difficulties in my lifetime, and especially in my mandate. And let me share with you probably the most difficult moment and what helped me really going forward. That was, I will never forget, in February 2013 in Bulgaria. There was a huge crisis, hundreds of thousands of people in different cities on the street protesting against monopolies and the way public institutions were organized. And actually a lot of strong political leaders were there, leading different political parties, the parliament. But in a difficult moment of history, they all resigned. So there was no government, there was no parties, there was no parliament, and I was alone. Having protests all over the country and being totally alone. So I was calling all those strong leaders and say, listen, let's make a kind of a coalition government, caretaker government, to bring everybody who can contribute to stability and development together. But they were playing their strongman games. They were fighting for being elected again, coming to the next cycle of political power, and I was left totally alone. What I've done was then really, first of all, and that was the recipe for success, I managed in a very successful and democratic way to bring my country in a very difficult moment of history to a better stand. I was alone. I had to appoint young people and a caretaker government to run the country, which is not the job for a president. But generally, it's like that. First of all, when it's difficult, it's important. If it's difficult, then it comes who you are. Second, you need to be capable of not hiding the problems, but pointing. If you want to solve a problem, you point at the problem. And that's the only way to solve it. It was also very important to have an inclusive approach. I invited the protesters, but those who do not protest, the political leaders, society leaders, institutional leaders, all of them together in an institution, in a debate, which I called citizens' debate, debate with the citizens, to find the solutions together. And that was very successful because it was inclusive. I didn't blame the others. I didn't point at somebody else as a convenient enemy or convenient excuse for mismanagement in the country. I took my own responsibility, but I tried to be inclusive, get everyone on the table in order to find a solution. Generally, I was looking for wisdom, because not for strength, because strength to me is something temporarily. Wisdom is something that is very sustainable on time. I saw a lot of strong leaders, and I was always questioning myself, Putin, Erdogan, Trump, Bibi Netanyahu, Modi, Orban, very strong leaders. But are they wise? Because you could be very strong, have a strong army, and occupy your neighbor, but is it wise to do so?
Yes. So that's an important point, because in extraordinary times, people look for strong leadership. And I think this is what we are seeing in many countries. And you gave a list, and I think the list is very long. We could be here all day. And you say wisdom is more important than strength. And was that wisdom or your approach important in building the trust with the citizens and with the community to achieve the changes?
Exactly. Napoleon was a very strong leader. He conquered almost all Europe back in the 19th century, but after him, it was a total devastation. And Europe was burning in wars for more than a century. Alexander the Great was a very, very strong leader, but after him there was a devastation too. So I always questioned myself, and actually one of the wisdoms Napoleon shared was guiding me, because I was looking back to learn from history. Napoleon, you should never forget, his extraordinary personality, a progressive general. When he was young and progressive general, he built up institutions in France. He innovated, for example, the Constitutional Court, which is there to serve rules. And then he became an emperor. Power games, strong man. As he became an emperor, he was fighting wars, and at the end, he said a very interesting sentence that is telling us what's going on in the world today. He was saying, if you don't have a cause, you need a war. So now what's the cause for a wise leader, of a wise president? Is it the cause to increase your territory by destabilizing your neighbors and the rules of international order? I don't think it's a cause. It's a cause as what the President Trump is doing today, for example, the question and destabilize the rules and institutions of international order and work for less, not more trust within the international system. You could be strong and do so, but I don't think it's wise. A wise leader is one that understands that success is collective effort. The success of a president is not his rating, is not his wars, his battles, is not his enemies. The success of a president is the success of ordinary people. If there is a progress in society, if ordinary people can see a hope, better life, more education, that's a success for a wise leader. And I was asking myself, I talk to everybody who is anybody in the world. I meet just all of them. I talked to Putin, to Erdogan, to all of the leaders. I had 12 meetings with Obama, 30 meetings with Chancellor Merkel, Xi Jinping, 3 meetings. I talked to all of them. And I was always trying to see strong but not wise, strong and wise, yes. Which is very rare in politics. And I can give you a lot of examples. Putin is very strong. But the strength is not a base of having a strong army or a huge territory or occupying a neighbor. The strength could only be a symbol of success, building up education, institutions, society, making your people free, making your people more educated and prosperous. That's a success, and that's a strength that comes with wisdom.
So during your presidency, I had the opportunity to visit your country.
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to meet you, but very beautiful country, and I was in Sofia. And one thing that struck me was that, being a member of the EU, many people migrated. So there was a huge migration out of Bulgaria after the First World War. Then another big migration after Bulgaria joined the EU. How did you convince people to stay, to build the vibrant economy that you currently have from a post-communist country?
When I became a president, one of the first things I've done, I changed priorities for my country. A president does not run the country in Bulgaria and in the European Union. The president, as a head of state, represents the country. It is expected that the president is a moral compass. The president is understanding that in a democratic country, it's normal to have a kind of fights between different ideas, different priorities. But it's expected that the president is representing the unity of the diversity of the nation. That's what the President Trump is not doing today in the United States, by the way. But that's, of course, another question. To me, it was very important to be a vice president, to set up priorities that make sense, not for me, not for my rating, but for the country. And I changed a lot of priorities in my country. Today, I'm in a very comfortable situation that results came and people could say, well, that was the President Plevneliev who started up the ecosystem, who brought a lot of government funds for young people to realize their ideas home. I was the creator of the ICT cluster, the automotive cluster, and the outsourcing cluster. And I'm very proud of that because those industries where I was from the scratch created hundreds of thousands of new jobs for young people to stay. But Bulgaria has and had a lot of problems. For example, in the energy sector, the country was totally dependent on Russian gas monopoly. Yes. What I've done, as a difference to the former president of Bulgaria, I said, I'm not talking about 1, 2, 3 projects. I'm talking about 3 priorities that make sense for our economy. And that was energy liberalization, energy diversification, and energy efficiency. And I was very proud to be the father of broad energy efficiency program that brought hundreds of thousands of Bulgarian families into better quality of life. Yes. I was the father of energy liberalization program. 5 years ago, Bulgaria was a slave. Yes. It was totally dependent on the Russian gas monopoly. Today, we have a gas stock exchange. We can buy easily gas from the United States. And that's so great that we're doing this. Somebody has to set up priorities that make sense. It's the same in society. It's the same in a company. And that's my advice also to future leaders. Actually, priorities that make sense not for you, but for your egoistic national interest or party interest. Priorities that make sense for society, for next generation. and then bring up results. Whatever you promise, you have to bring up results. I was the only president of the European Union. I tracked all my promises during my campaign.
Yes.
And I promised exactly 40 things. And then on the day one of my presidency, I asked all the media, listen, that's what I promised, 1, 2, 3, 40. Did I promise something more? No, that was it. It's on my website. Right. From the day one, my 40 promises were on my website, so people could check, could trace, and could control their present. Am I, let's say, forgetting what I promised? Am I not delivering on my promises? That is bringing trust. And trust is a very fragile, but probably the most important asset you can have.
Yeah, so I remember reading there were huge demonstrations and protests because energy prices went up, and that was a very challenging time for Bulgaria, but you managed that transition very well. But you're saying that in addition to wisdom, trust, which comes from wisdom, but also transparency is very important. Yeah. So did you have a clear plan? So day one, you're at your desk. You say, 5 years or 4 years later, my success is going to look like this. So in your view, what did success look like? At that moment when you sat at that chair.
Exactly, look like transparency is changing everything. If you have the right plan and the right approach, you will succeed, definitely. You could be genius and have the right plan, but if you don't have the right approach, you're not going to succeed. The right approach is to be inclusive, select, like success is collective effort. It's not just the approach of... so on the other side, if you don't have the right plan, but the right approach, you're not going to succeed too because your plan is wrong. So I was trying from the day one to have the right plan and the right approach, thinking long term. I would never forget there were very tough political fights, like the Democrats and the Republicans here. It was the same in my country. And there was a kind of a taping scandal. Everybody was crazy about, and exactly on purpose, in the day of blowing a huge taping scandal in my country, during my presidency, I organized a national security council, and everybody was thinking, okay, so the president is going to see about this taping scandal. I said, no. During the biggest political battle, during this taping scandal, I made a national security council on Bulgaria 2030 plan. So I made a long-term plan for Bulgaria, and I was using that the politicians were playing their power games of their bad conscience, and they agreed on my long-term plan for Bulgaria with those priorities. And I was very, very, very proud to be the father of this long-term planning for Bulgaria that is now bringing up results. Yes. But the most important thing, really, when you talk about those difficult moments, it's really very important for all of us to understand that it was inclusive effort, it was having the right projects, having the solutions to the problems we face, and knowing that everyone can contribute. It depends on everyone to bring a solution, to improve our democracy, to improve our institutions. And now talking about transparency, honestly speaking, I never planned to be a president. I didn't want to be a minister. I didn't want to be even a CEO or a business leader. But I was open-minded and looking for a sense. How can I serve? I served in the business for huge American and German investments in the region, and it was very successful because it was very transparent, very transparent. And then I became a minister. That was in June 29. The world was collapsing, Lehman Brothers, the worst crisis in the history. Money was drawing out. I was a top CEO of a very big German real estate management and investment company, and out of 250,000 people who are in the real estate and construction industry in my country, half of them on the street, unemployed, just with 3 months because of the crisis that hit in September 29. And then what I've done was actually, first of all, to be very honest with all those people. And secondly, I went to Brussels and I said, listen, there is no market, there is no investors, there is no money. The only money for Bulgaria was the European money, but it was frozen because of intransparency and irregularities. And I talked to the boss of the European Commission and I said, those billions for modernization, we need them. And they say, but there is no trust. Yes. And I said, I will find an innovative way from zero trust to bring it to 100 as soon as possible. Brussels did not believe me, but I was very innovative. The day I came back to Bulgaria, I called Transparency International in London. Wow. And They say, who's calling? I said, the Bulgarian Minister of Regional Development and Public Works. What do you want? Can you run the public procurement for my ministry?
Yes.
They said, are you crazy, insane? But they came.
Yes.
They made a special team, and with Transparency International, we made miracles.
Yes.
Actually, we built highways, railways, high-speed rails, underground, a lot of modernization projects, and actually, transparency
Yes.
made me the most beloved minister in Bulgaria ever, with the highest rating. The prime minister said, listen, why don't you run for president? People love you. And I said, no. Why not? And I said, I'm not there for those old jobs. I'm there to serve. I was in the business. I made my money. I just wanted to serve my country. And I knew I'm serving well because I brought 7,000 modernization projects. I wanted to finish my job.
Yes.
But anyhow, he was a good politician. At the end, he said, listen, you want to serve? You can serve as a president too,
Yes, yes.
which I've done.
Yeah.
And I was very proud to be elected by
So
people and serve people.
That's remarkable. So it seems that it's important to have, as a leader, wisdom, a good plan with priorities, but also a very transparent and inclusive approach that empowers peoples and citizens and enables dialogue with them, so they're actually part of the solutions. And you've had many successes, but what's your legacy? What will history say about you?
It's amazing question. 99% of the politicians do not understand the complexity of your question, and they do a lot of mistakes. Almost 90% of all the politicians, former presidents, head of state, I know they've done huge mistakes after the mandate. You could be a very successful president, but then you fight power games, you make your own political party, you're going back to parliament, you want to be on power again and again, you just don't want to get out and serve in a different way, and that's what is ruining the reputation and the legacy of a lot of heads of state and government. I was talking to at least 100 heads of state and government, all of them I was very proud to serve, and I was asking them, listen, what about your legacy? How do you make sure that you build up your legacy? Because you're not making history. That was my conversation with Madam Chancellor Merkel, for example,
Yes.
a very good friend. I speak fluent German. I had at least 30 meetings with her. And I said, Madam Chancellor, how do you think you're going to make history and stay in history?
Okay.
And she said, Rosen, you know, I think it's because in all those years, and that's true, it was very tough, a lot of crisis in the European Union, and she was the one to bring solutions,
Yes.
to be inclusive, to be democratic. You can trust her. Madam Merkel was not just transparent, she was predictable. And even predictability is a much more important word than transparency. Because you can be transparent day by day, but not predictable. And then you're ruining institutions, ruining trust, and you're ruining even markets. So she was extremely predictable. Muti, the mother to all of us. And she said, I think I'm going to make history by helping solving all those. She said, no. My wisdom, which I learned from talking to so many heads of state, business leaders all over the world, was that you're not going into history by appointment or by your wishful thinking. History is not written by you. Definitely President Trump is not going to make history of what he believes he's making history today. History starts with the next generation. It has to pass at least 10, 20 years after. And the next generation will start facing the real results of what you were as a business, a political leader 20 years ago. Because whatever you do at the end is only measured by sustainability, which is linked to wisdom and not strength. A president is not making history with his rating. He's not making history with the strength of his army, increasing his territory. He's not making even history by destroying in one and the other way institutions. The president definitely is not making history by using weapons, shooting, fighting wars. It's so easy to shoot. Strong men don't know that, but wise men know that it's very easy to shoot. It's very difficult to rebuild. Yes. For example, in the American society today, I worried because I see that the American society is extremely divided. Even if the President Trump is re-elected, I don't care much. I care, but even if he's re-elected, it's not important to me because I cannot learn from him. He does not represent any wisdom I can take. Even if you cannot learn, then you have a problem. But the point is that whatever the name of the next American president is going to be after Trump, the very first thing he has to do is to start reconcile, build up, bring your nation together, it's so divided, and bring people in their diversity but unity to represent what the American dream is not all about, and it's not what is transmitted today. And the same in my understanding was that actually the success of a leader is only based by progress in society and the progress on the planet. I was very proud to put my signature on the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, even to negotiate for the Southeast European countries and bring unity in all of them. I was, Ban Ki-moon was here.
Yes.
He's an amazing personality. He was asking me to help by the negotiation for the Southeast European countries. The same was with the Paris Climate Change Agreement. It's just amazing agreement.
So you're talking about the next generation. So
Yes.
your legacy is really progress in society, but also for the next generation to continue.
Yeah.
So how does a good leader with wisdom ensure that the leadership is handed over to the next generation to ensure continuity, stability, and sustainability?
I was very, very, very cautious of what I'm gonna do after end of my mandate in order to help my country making progress. Many other presidents have made those mistakes, going back to parliament, fighting, and they lost trust. So I'm going my own way, and that is my legacy today starts coming in. I was building up the ICT, the automotive, the outsourcing clusters, 160,000 new jobs for young people to stay in Bulgaria have been created. The real estate industry has booming, and that is a part of my legacy because I was the one to put that. Today, for example, the Bulgarian government announced 40% cut on the gas price for Bulgaria from Gazprom. If you have 40% less, if you calculate 4 billion cubic meters of gas multiplied by 40, that's $10 billion for 10 years to be saved from Bulgarian people, companies, as a wise and successful move to build up new priorities that can bring results for people. So my legacy, I'm in a very comfortable position today, by the way, in my country, because sometimes we need to lose something in order to understand what we had. I worry about the European Union. Sometimes people probably can destroy it, and then after they will understand what it was. Sometimes you're in the paradise, but you can destroy it, and after you say, oh, I understand what it was, but I'm losing, and then I'm understanding. We shouldn't lose something which is positive, which is bringing result, to understand that it was like that. And because of that, my point is I continue be a strong voice in my country. I continue work for trust. I'm not there for a job. I'm not taking some other positions. I'm not going back to power, even I was invited to do so, because I think I'm going to ruin the situation that I have today to be a moral voice, to be a strong voice, to be someone who can continue building up. And when you have hundreds of thousands of new jobs, when you have progress, when you have a better gas prices, when you have energy efficiency programs, when you have coal mines, let's say, closed, as a difference to what President Trump is doing here in the United States, that's part of my legacy that hopefully people are going to understand, and they start understanding. So in a way, people are telling me, we lost you, Mr. President, why don't you come back? But I'm there. I continue serving.
Yes.
And sometimes if I think myself, the way I serve now is even more efficient of being just in the chair of the president.
But you had the incredible wisdom of actually stepping down when everything was going so well, and that is very rare. Which is, many presidents would like to stay on forever if they change constitutions. So in the last minute, we have many aspiring leaders in the audience, but also both here, but also those who are watching remotely at Harvard and beyond. What are your words of wisdom to these aspiring leaders?
Lessons learned are extremely important. Max Weber, I hope, is not going to be right, but it seems today he is right. Max Weber was an amazing philosopher back in the 19th century, saying with just one sentence, people don't learn from history. We're not learning from history. And if you don't learn from history, we're not making a progress. If you come back to protectionism, you're not learning from history. You're not going to make a long-term progress. If America is first, but peace is not first, you're not making long-term progress. You're making a long-term instability coming in, which then is going to be part of your legacy. After 5-10 years, if it's unstable, then people will say, it's those two guys who were questioning rules, institutional orders, and they've done what they've done. So my point is very simple as an advice. Have priorities that make sense so that society and people can see a hope, a horizon, and make a progress. Work hard on those priorities, bring results, and collect wisdom with strength, but not just strength, which to me is not sustainable or long term.
And have the wisdom to learn from history, but not necessarily repeat it.
Exactly,
So
that would be great.
President
Thank you.
Plevneliev, thank you for this incredible
Thank you very much.
words of wisdom from you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Thank you.